It's time for Wheels Wednesday. This is the time of the week when we talk about everything auto. And this time around, we're talking about a new entrant to the Indian car market in the form of Citroen. I do not know if I'm saying this name right, and my guest is probably going to correct me. Renuka Kirpalani, Executive Editor, Video Content at Autocar India, is joining me to talk about the Citroen C3. Thanks so much, Renuka, for taking the time. My knowledge of French is limited to a few words. So could you tell us about Citroen and what's this new car all about?
Hey, Alex, thanks for having me as always. And yeah, you're right. I am going to correct you. But to be honest, whenever I speak hurriedly, I say it the same way, but it's Citroën, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, correctly pronounced. Because you have the accent above the E when you spell it out correctly. So yeah, this is a French brand. It's been in India a while. We've seen the C5 in India, and we've done that review also earlier. But we don't see too many of them on the road, so that's probably why people are unfamiliar with the brand. And Citroen are hoping to change that with the C3 because this is a made in India car, made for India. And, they've got above 90% localization. So they're aiming for it to be very competitively priced. And this is their big shot at the Indian market. So, yeah, this is the Citroen C3.
When you say competitively priced, because it's made in India, one would assume that that was the strategy. Could you tell us a little bit more about what the thinking was and how it stacks up?
Yeah. So, when, I test drove the Citroen C3 and our review is out today for those who want to see it. But basically, the car, it has that French flair, it has the French styling, and it definitely has the DNA of Citroen, which is, that magic carpet like. So very good ride quality. The engines are pretty impressive too. In fact, once you get behind the wheel and drive it, it is really an impressive car. The thing is that, in the bid to make this competitively priced, they have pared down the features quite a bit. And, these days consumers have come to expect a certain feature level. They may or may not use some of them, but they just expect them to be there, and they kind of equate it with price, and they kind of equate it with the quality of the product, which is a thing that I think Citroen is going to suffer because people feel that if the car's pared down, probably it's not that great. Not necessarily true. I think people should get behind the wheel and drive that car because once they do, they'll realize that it is actually quite good. But like I said, there are a lot of features that one is used to seeing that's missing, and prices are not out yet. They will be later on in July, but we expect it to be priced, alongside the likes of the Ignis, the Kiger, the Magnite, Tata Punch. So around that 5.5 to around 9 lakh rupee range is where we expect it to be priced.
Interesting. So it is priced competitively, one would think. But this is a cross, is it not? Can you compare it with a traditional hatchback?
Well, they prefer to call it a hatchback with a twist, which is what Citroen's marketing speak is. They're definitely not terming it as an SUV or a crossover because I think they will be coming up with a product later on based on this platform, more upright, more SUV-ish. So they're treading carefully. It is a sub 4-meter car. So it's quite hatch-like. It drives like a car, and it does still have some of the, upright stance, ground clearance, sort of beefy attitude that an SUV has. So they're looking, if you ask me, it is definitely a mix between the two. But Citroen are choosing to call it a hatch with a twist and definitely not terming it as a crossover or an SUV.
Tell me about your experience with the ride. Obviously, this is your typical city car, and therefore, what is the kind of responsiveness that you saw? What is the kind of efficiency that you saw that this engine provides?
So there are two engine variants. So let me tell you that there's going to be no diesel engine. There are only petrol engines. There's also no automatic, which is a big missing thing, I think, now because people appreciate automatics. And they're both mated to manual gearboxes. There's a 1.2-liter naturally aspirated engine, which has a 5-speed manual. There is a 1.2-liter turbo engine, which has a 6-speed manual. The turbo engine is really, really impressive, actually. It's one of the most powerful engines in its segment. And honestly, it's responsive, it feels good, it's got a wide range of power. So whether you're ambling around in city traffic or you're pushing it out on a highway doing overtakes, it responds equally well. And I think that's what's enjoyable about that engine. So it was really a surprise when we drove it. And the naturally aspirated engine is not bad either. It just keeps you working the gears a little bit more than the turbo does. So I think all in all, their performance is pretty good. What is exceptional is the ride quality for that caliber and category of car. It really rides well over the rough roads, and it's got that typical Citroen DNA of good ride quality. The suspension's working away underneath, but you don't feel it and you don't hear it either, which is good because it kind of isolates you from even the sounds of the suspension. And as far as even the handling of the car was actually quite nice. Fuel efficiency is above 19 point, somewhere around 19.5, 19.7. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but around there, which is good. And these are the claimed figures. Of course, real world figures will be quite different. And when we do the full review and test drive, then we'll know about that actually. They're also claiming a 10-second 0 to 100 on the turbo. So these are the claim figures so far. When we put our test equipment onto it, I'll be able to tell you more.
But the other thing that I'm sure that a lot of viewers will be very keen to understand is you mentioned that this is kind of pared down,
Yeah.
but you also said it's a good idea to get behind the wheel. You did get behind the wheel. The stock infotainment system, the stock seating, all of that. What was your initial response or feeling on that?
So we probably drove the higher end variants, but when we got the spec sheets and we looked at what the base variant offers, it is a very pared down product. Even in mine, when we drove, the infotainment system is really nice. It's a large 10-inch infotainment system and really good for that category of car. It's responsive, but then it misses out things like a reverse. When you see that size of infotainment system, you imagine there would be a reverse camera. There isn't one. There's no central locking, unlocking. Things like the power window switches for the rear are in the rear part of the center console, not so easy to reach for the front driver, maybe accessible to the rear passengers, but sort of kept there so that there's only one set of switches needed. So there's a lot of, felt roof lining, lots of things that are missing. There's no tachometer in the car. There's no rear wiper. So lots of simple things that one has just come to expect these days that are missing. And those were missing even on the variant that we drove. But if you're asking me about seat comfort, it's very good. I was completely comfortable in the car. And in fact, after a whole day of driving, we walked away extremely comfortable and it didn't feel like such a long drive. So that's saying a lot. Like I told you, the performance is very good. And if you're asking for the infotainment system, it does have Apple wireless Apple CarPlay. It does have Apple wireless Android Auto. So, the connectivity features that you expect, it does have that. So while they have given you things in certain areas, they have pared back in areas that they didn't think were important. And based on consumer feedback, they say, where people felt they didn't use those features much. But like I said, even though people may not use these features, they've come to expect them and they equate it with the quality and value of a car.
Which brings me to the bottom line. In this segment, as somebody that is challenging the status quo and the incumbents, do you think that they'll make a dent?
I think they'll have to have quite knockout pricing to get people into the showrooms because, like I said, once people drive the car, they're going to appreciate it and they'll probably be able to look past the missing features. But you have to get people behind the wheel to realize that. And so, knockout pricing will be something that Citroen have to offer.
Fabulous chat, as it always is. Thank you so much, Renuka, for taking the time.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me as always.